KT McFarland is standing by, Fox News national security analyst. KT, so much to talk to you about. I want to get to Iran in just a moment because Secretary Kerry, seems weird to say that, Secretary Kerry testified on Capitol yesterday, but everybody's talking about the handshake between Raul Castro and the president yesterday during the memorial service for Nelson Mandela. Your thoughts on that?
It's about time. Look, I'm a cold warrior, and I'm a hawk. But, on the other hand, the Castros are eventually going to die. And Cuba's going to be ripe for investment. And companies are going to rush to do business with Cuba. And whoever is there first, whoever has their leg in the door first, is going to be in a premier position. Now, how are we going to feel if it's Chinese companies? How are we going to feel if it's Russian companies? It's got to be American companies.
Wait. I got to stop you there because a lot of people are looking at this and saying this is wrong. You should never shake hands with a dictator. You should never shake hands with a person who has such a horrible human rights record that it was a big mistake for him to do that. I'm very surprised to hear you say otherwise.
Well, I'm very realistic about it, which is, somebody is going to eventually develop Cuba. Some big outside country is going to do it, and it better be us. Because if it's not, the consequences are significant to our national security. And I agree, you shouldn't shake hands with dictators. They've got a murderous record. But frankly, Nixon shook hands with Mao. Reagan shook hands with Russian communist leaders. So I think that the long-term strategic interests of the United States are far more important in this, because how are we going to feel if, for example, the Chinese do business there? The Chinese want to use Cuban ports for refueling Chinese, naval vessels. We do not want to be in that world. I mean, we have had a Cuban Missile Crisis over that. We had a war in Grenada, short war that we won, by the way, with Grenada over the issue of Soviet military facilities in the region. That's a part of the world and a part of the oceans, and just an arm's throw from Florida that we have to make sure is in friendly American hands, and it is going to change hands at some point. They are going to need and look for outside investors. I mean, look what happened in China after Nixon and Mao shook their hands. American companies flooded in to do business with China. Look what is happening in Iran, for example, when you want to talk about Secretary Kerry. They're never going to get sanctions reimposed. Why? Because countries and companies are going to flood into Iran to do business with Iran. There are a lot of economic opportunities for outside investors in Iran. At the same time, there are massive outside opportunities for investors in Cuba, and they better be American investors.
What's going to happen in Cuba? I think a lot of people wonder once the Castros are out, who is going to take over, who's in line, and what kind of government will take shape?
Big question mark. Nobody knows. Raul Castro has tried to do a few things to liberalize. Tourism has started dribbling back to Cuba, nothing like it was before the communists took over. It's a big question. Political instability is a possibility and a likelihood. That's why it's so important, I think, for American companies, however we're going to do it, get the camel's nose under the tent, whether it's using Christian groups to go into Cuba, whether it's doing some kind of Doctors Without Borders, American doctors who go in and do medical assistance. I mean, the Cuban medical system stinks. And so there are opportunities that we can do short of state-to-state diplomatic relations. Everybody sets up an embassy. I would start doing that stuff now.
All right, here is John Kerry yesterday on Capitol Hill being questioned about the Iran deal. He's making his forceful argument for the reason for the negotiations that are ongoing.
This agreement halts the progress of Iran's nuclear program, halts the progress, and rolls it back in certain places.
All right, so...
Nice try.
You're not buying what they're laying down, are you?
Oh, my Lord. Look, think of it this way. Iran has a big bowl of popcorn, it has popcorn kernels, and it has a popcorn-making machine. But it's totally broke. So what are we doing? We are basically saying, here's the money when we lift the sanctions, because then they can have economic revival. So we're saying, here's the money. We're going to buy that bowl of popcorn. But you can keep the popcorn machine, and you can keep the kernels. There's nothing to prevent them from making more popcorn. Now, why does this matter to us? I mean, I don't think Iran wants nuclear weapons because it's going to go nuke somebody. I think Iran wants to be the hegemonic, the most powerful country in the region, in the Persian Gulf and in the larger greater Middle East. They see that we are leaving the region. They see there's an opportunity. They see an opportunity with Obama particularly because he's desperate for some kind of legacy, and why not have a really great foreign policy legacy like peace with Iran? And they are moving into that void. They want to have the economic powerhouse that they enjoyed before the mullahs took over in the late 1970s, and they will have that. They have oil, they have economic opportunity, and if they also have nuclear weapons, they are all of a sudden, the alpha dog of the Middle East.
All right, but I know what you're hearing from Kerry in this hearing is, okay, look, I know there's some skepticism about these negotiations with Iran, and we don't trust them. So, but he said you need to trust us, because if they waver even an iota from what they have promised to do, we will come back to you and we will ask you to impose tougher sanctions. That's what he's selling.
Maybe they could get Congress to go off for deeper sanctions if Iran, after 6 months, says no, thank you. But it'll never work out that way. Iran will delay. There'll be a few more issues. There'll be negotiations. But the whole time the centrifuges are spinning, companies are investing in Iran, and the other countries in the region are looking at Iran as a de facto nuclear weapons state.
Do you see Congress putting sanctions in this year?
I don't know. If I were a member of Congress, I think what I would do is not to vote to impose more sanctions today, but to leave it out there so that there's like an automatic tripwire. If Iran hasn't agreed to, whatever the deal is, by X date, then sanctions go into effect. Sort of like Obamacare goes into effect after elections. I would do it that way. And, and the people who give this false choice between, well, it's either this or war, and nobody wants a war. No, those are not the two choices. There is a third choice, which is economic pressure and economic power. Why do you think the Iranians are at the table? It's because the sanctions were making a difference. What was the rush? I think we should have let the sanctions continue to bite. Once those sanctions are lifted, you'll never get them back.
KT McFarland, always a pleasure. Thank you so much.